A woman's personal crisis while babysitting two kids guides her behavior with those two children. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about an interesting short story, and one from a pretty new author, relatively new. And today's short story is all about babysitting unruly children and a mental health crisis for an individual. I am referring to Little Beast from the short story collection Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor, which was published in 2021. For those who don't know, Brandon Taylor is a pretty new author, most of their work getting published within the past 5 to 10 years. They are a Black American writer. They're also queer, which is great to get that representation on this channel. Talking about more than just, straight white males and whatnot, which I feel, unfortunately, is just a, an ever-present trend for this. Brendan has only written a couple things in their time, including a short story collection like this, and what appears to be a semi-autobiographical novel about their time in higher education. Which sounds interesting. I would really like to explore that after having read this. It's a pretty high quality short story collection, examining people who are at like various states in their lives, not having a good time, mostly dealing with a lot of internal struggles. You especially see that in Little Beast, which I'm talking about here today. That's pretty much all I know about Brandon Taylor because, again, they are a new author. So without further ado, let's talk about Filthy Animals. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Little Beast focuses on Sylvia. She is an unmarried woman living with a married couple in a kind of duplex household. And she serves as a babysitter for their children while the family is out of the house, and she seems to do the job without really complaining. But deep inside her, there's a lot going on where she finds these kids annoying. And at the beginning of the story, she's promised that if the kids were quiet and not causing problems, they could have French fries for lunch. And she begins making that, but one of the children that she's watching, a little girl, is messy and has gotten her hands in dog poop outside. And so Sylvia has to take a break from preparing food and clean her up a little bit, which the little girl is unwilling to go through the process of getting clean. She's being obnoxious, and Sylvia feels anger growing with her, and she thinks that she can even rend this child very quickly without feeling much. And that's alarming, but Sylvia stops short of actually doing it. After she cleans the child, she goes back to making lunch, and soon the children are eating fries. The little boy of the household is not letting it cool down, which Sylvia admits is part of his impulse control problem, much like his father, she notes. So he's like just burning the roof of his mouth. And we also see an admission of an affair take place here, where Sylvia seems to be having sex with the boy's father, and the mother must not know that is happening. And the little girl is just stabbing crayons into her fries and eating it that way, which is quite strange. She then puts the kids down for some naps and goes outside to drink some water and reflect on her life. Not really happy and struggling with interacting with her mother and her father, not only in the present but also in the past when she was growing up. But she soon begins to hear rumblings upstairs, and it appears that the little girl has woken up. And once again, she's messy. She keeps dirt and whatnot in her closet for some reason, and some of it's gotten in her hair. And Sylvia decides to give this girl a bath at this point. The child and her have a bit of a conversation where the child asks, like, what happened to her boyfriend, or why is she living here? And she's like, my mother, or your mother allowed me to live here very kindly. And I used to live with my boyfriend, but we broke up because both of us weren't doing too well, and I didn't want to really stay there with him. The little girl doesn't really respond to that. I don't think she is capable of it, and the conversation seems to end there with Sylvia just waiting to leave as soon as the parents get here, so she can go back to her side of the duplex and relax. As the story comes to a close, while she's thinking of all of this, she hears the noise upstairs of the little girl playing around once again, suggesting that she's going to have to deal with her again before the parents get home, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth thinking about with Little Beast. It was a very alarming story. Certainly a little bit of a shock to read, especially with some of the things Sylvia was thinking. But I think that sort of highlights the crisis that the character was thinking about in this story, or dealing with. Again, this seems to be a little bit of a theme with filthy animals, with various characters just not doing too well, and at certain points of struggle, and we're seeing snapshots of that struggle. One of the themes of this particular story is that of the personal crisis. Things aren't going well for Sylvia. We see that she's in poor mental health. That's one of the reasons she broke up with her boyfriend, is she saw the same thing in him, and she didn't really want to be around for that. Maybe to drag him down, but also for him dragging her down, which isn't a good thing to say, but you got to take care of your mental health, I suppose. And dealing with that breakup hasn't really made her feel all that great. And on top of that, she's having an affair with the children's father. And she feels guilty about it, but they both have needs that are being met in that process. So it seems that's why she's continuing it. And then there's also a repeated statement that she seems to be saying, take it back, take it back, take it back. I'm not really sure why she's saying that. There must be something going on, or she must be feeling guilty about the affair, but she's repeating that, and anyone who repeats stuff like that is probably not doing too well. And all of this is kind of affecting her view of the kids. She's not happy to be around them. She's thinking mean things and possibly even wanting to hurt them, and she stops herself short of that. But it's clear that things are not going well for her. And I like how Taylor kind of presents this. It's kind of very rough and scary to see someone thinking like that, but someone in her state, someone who's having this kind of crisis, would probably be thinking that. They wouldn't be a picture of moral beauty or anything like that. It's also interesting because this is only a snapshot of her life. Again, that's what's happening in many of these other stories. It does kind of sink the story a little bit, I would say, not too much, but I would have liked more, and possibly something fleshed out. But not ending it kind of does allow Taylor to sort of pose a question, is what needs to change for Sylvia? Something clearly needs to change, otherwise she's going to keep going through this, dealing with these problems, and something bad will happen as a result of it. It's not like there weren't signs, but if no one's addressing the problem, then it's going to come to a head eventually. Brandon Taylor is also talking about gender here. Sylvia seems bound by the constricting gender roles that have been placed on her in this society. in American society. A lot is expected of her as a woman, and she doesn't seem to be having a good time trying to meet those gender expectations. They've seemingly been enforced for quite some time, especially by her parents. She notes that there was a lot enforced upon her by her parents, and so she once thought everything was possible, but because of her parents, she now thinks that not as much is possible, especially for her. And showing how those gender norms are kind of enforced upon us by our environment and by the people who raise us. We also see a little bit more of these gender norms, these gender expectations, through her interaction with the little girl in this story. She specifically notes the little girl isn't bound by these limitations yet. Anything seems to be possible, and her parents aren't enforcing any of these same standards that Sylvia seemed to enforce upon her. Or maybe they plan to do it at a later date. It's a bit unclear in this story. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. She gazes up at Sylvia, and for a moment Sylvia thinks she can understand the girl. She knows what it is to be trapped inside a thing, inside a life. She knows what it is to want to tear a hole in everything. But still there is something else. The girl seems bound by nothing at all except for the moment by Sylvia. There is nothing that can keep her inside herself. It's the kind of life Sylvia would like to live, but she knows it's the kind of life that is impossible because the world can't abide a raw woman. And that's a really sad quote because it shows everything that Sylvia is really dealing with, that someone out there has enforced these constricting norms on her and made her life a little bit miserable. And there is some hope for the little girl in this story, in terms of the freedom that she gets to experience that she might not get to experience in a couple of years as she grows older. And a lot of this is relating back to the crisis that she's going through. These gender norms can affect your mental health, and you can feel constricted and like you don't have a lot of control over yourself, and that's going to affect how you interact with others. But it should be asked, does she want to kill the little girl in this story? Because the writing certainly suggests that, and if so, why would she want to kill the little girl? I'd say it's an argument, yes, that she does want to kill the little girl because she's thinking it quite a bit. But when you ask the question why, I think the answer is to protect her from this world that will ruin her. Much like she feels that she was ruined. It'd be an awful thing to kill this little girl, but then she wouldn't be suffering from this poor mental health or be treated poorly by men or be made to feel like nothing is really possible, that all avenues of personal growth and opportunity are closed to her. Again, you probably shouldn't kill someone for that reason, but if this is all the world has to offer you, you don't want someone to feel what you're feeling. That would be awful. So Brandon Taylor certainly does a lot of interesting things in sort of presenting this and making it more than just Sylvia's dealing with a mental health crisis, so she's going to kill this child. It's she seems to care for this child, but she's afraid for what's going to happen to her, all the terrible things that might come about in her life. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Little Beast by Brandon Taylor. It's a pretty short story, not a whole lot to it, but it is fairly interesting. Some good quality writing and some very good psychological introspection and all of that. It makes for an interesting read, and I do recommend it to you out there. Perhaps you may be able to find it online, but I recommend you go to your local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries, and then you might be able to find this as I have, because I checked this one out for my library. If you have any thoughts, any comments, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this book, the short story, or this author if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and crisis while babysitting children travels. Farewell.